Marvel Snap's launch was a huge success, but throttled leveling is already tarnishing the experience. Rapid matches and countless progression hooks keep you coming back day after day, even if a lot of the in-match action can feel quite random or overly simple. It's not a tactical powerhouse ready to rival the competitive mechanics of Magic the Gathering, or content rich enough to be a Hearthstone-level time sink. But once you're in its clutches, you'll find it's the thing you go back to every time you have a spare 15 minutes. It is the ultimate snack game, and if it's got you for half your lunch break every day for a week, it's doing its job. There are 3 randomly selected locations where you can play cards. Each location is concealed until all 3 are shown. One location is revealed per turn for the first 3 turns. Players have 2 paths to victory. The first is to have 2 locations where the combined attack power of the cards you place there are higher than your opponent's. The other is to battle to a draw at 2 locations and have a higher amount of attack points at the remaining location. The player with the most combined points at the end of 6 rounds wins the match. With new cards and locations added each month, the game continues to feel pretty fresh. The meta rarely has a chance to settle, and limited time events, primarily boosting the appearance rates of certain impactful locations, mix things up day by day. As it stands, the game's huge Achilles heel is the process of acquiring new cards. At early levels, progression is a breeze, where you'll regularly be adding to your collection and opening up new deck archetypes. Once you get past collection level 1000, however, a big number, but one that doesn't take that much time to reach, things slow to a crawl, and it only gets worse as you complete each series of cards. That throttled progression and the failure of updates to successfully address it is a huge point of contention. It makes the game an incredible grind, and the odd thing is, it's not one you can even really buy your way out of. The result is a situation almost worse than pay to win. It's a card game where the new cards introduced each month are completely unattainable for almost everyone. Stacklin starts simply. Open a pack of 3 cards, each with a resource like rock or wood on them, then stack them to craft new resources. Sell cards to get coins, which can be spent on larger packs with different resources. It's a familiar gameplay loop for any management sim lover. It puts players into a catchy flow state that's reminiscent of Dorfromantik, with its ambient tile placement puzzles. Stacklin's visual design is straightforward, making the game easy to jump right into. It opens like a great alchemy game, where much of the fun comes from trying wacky combinations, like using 2 villagers to create a new villager. The challenge ramps up, but it never feels like a steep learning curve. The first big hurdle is keeping villagers fed. The game also throws in silly curveballs. Random chaotic cards show up in card packs like a chicken that produced egg, but the chicken also rambled about the play space, causing chaos. As you grow the number of villagers, you'll need to defend against giant rats or goblins that emerge from strange portal cards that appear. The late game naturally transitions into battle planning. Equip villagers out with specific weapons to turn them into mages, warriors, and more. It's in line with Loop Hero, where each pass, or day cycle in Stacklin's case, allows you to build a stronger fighter. Stacklin's rounds out to one of the most immediately accessible and engaging card-based roguelites and brings a fresh breeze into the genre. It took practically no time to learn, and it will consume so many of my hours to come. Breachway is the result of FTL and Slay the Spire loving each other very much. It feels like so many indies incorporate roguelike deck-building elements into their feature arsenal these days that it's difficult not to get a little bit tired of hearing inspired by Slay the Spire. Breachway is a roguelike deck-building game set in a sci-fi universe and has you steer a ship through many dangers as you transport mysterious and important data through the stars. You travel from system to system, encountering enemies, frenemies, events, and other things that will make your run easier or more difficult, depending on your resources, decisions, and relations. Which brings us to one of the more interesting innovations the game offers: faction relations. Like in many other games of this genre, your deck grows over time as you pick up more cards after defeating enemies in combat. What's cool about Breachway is that these cards depend on the kind of equipment your ship has on board. Like in FTL, you can pick up different modules to add to your ship, which in turn provide different sets of cards and synergies. For example, an improvised drilling laser will give you different attack options than a military-grade beam. You can also procure upgrades for these systems, adding some extra capabilities. Staying with the FTL similarities for a bit, Breachway also features crew members that you can assign to different sections of the ship, where they will provide special abilities for you to use. A morale resource is needed to activate these, which can be gained by making certain decisions in events, a nice extra consideration to keep in mind. What sets Breachway apart is how the coherent and well-executed art style adds to the experience, giving it this very polished and high-quality feeling on top of the A-plus gameplay. The fundamentals of this one are very strong, and it is a must-try for all deck-building card game fans. Balatro is captivating audiences and critics alike with its innovative fusion of poker-inspired gameplay and roguelike deck-building elements. At its core, Balatro is not a traditional poker game, but rather draws heavily from poker mechanics to create a unique roguelike deck-builder experience. Players start with a standard 52-card deck and work through rounds or blinds, aiming to score a minimum number of chips to advance, all while not playing against direct opponents. Critics have praised Balatro for its engaging mechanics, a thrid reason, and the satisfying progression system, highlighting the game's ability to make every card and decision count. The game's design cleverly incorporates roguelike elements with poker, providing a fresh and addictive experience that's both easy to pick up and challenging to master. The strategic depth, combined with a plethora of card types and effects, encourages players to experiment with different builds and strategies, offering a rich and replayable gaming experience. If you are a fan of deck building, then this game should be your pick. The game's intricate mechanics and focus on strategic deck building over traditional poker gameplay can be both its greatest strength and a potential barrier to broader appeal. Nonetheless, Balatro is celebrated for its innovation and the unique niche it carves out within the deck builder and roguelike genres. And on the other hand, if you would like to get into poker and start learning it by not playing classical poker, here you go. It's poker. Honestly, it is. And for the first rounds of a new run, before you've started to flare things in weird directions, you'll be playing pretty straight poker. You are dealt cards. You make poker hands. Inscription is a wonderfully creepy card game that's as surprising as it is fun. Inscription holds much more than meets the eye, and a lot of what's so impressive about it are the unexpected places it ends up taking you. That means getting into many of the specific moments that make it so special will blunt their impact to a certain degree. The game takes the form of head-to-head battles against an AI opponent. You play creature cards onto your side of the board, which will automatically attack whatever is across from them each turn, be that opposing creatures or nothing at all. If it's the latter, any damage they would have done is instead added to your opponent's side of a tipping scale. But any damage you take will tip it back towards your direction. Once one side of that scale is at least 5 damage heavier than the other, the match is over. That makes each fight a fun strategic tug-of-war, where taking a hit one turn could mean you're just out of reach of winning the next. Exciting bosses can also challenge you with prolonged encounters and unique twists, ranging from a miner who turns your creatures into chunks of gold to some later ones that broke my expectations in legitimately jaw-dropping ways. That's the core of Inscription that always stays constant, but the creatures you'll use, the way you play them, the extra mechanics they have, and the structure of the metagame around each match all shift drastically as you progress. While it starts off using a branching, rogue-like structure recognizable to anyone who has played Slay the Spire, picking between paths and upgrading your deck as you go, it doesn't stay that way the whole time. Without spoiling any surprises, the skin and bones of Inscription can change just as dramatically as its meat, but the heart at its center always keeps everything pumping to a familiar beat. Inscription is a surprising and delightful meta twist on the digital card games that have exploded in recent years. Its unsettling story is the perfect vehicle for its ever-evolving mechanics, which constantly keep the simple but entertaining card game at its heart fresh. It's a wonderfully strange game, but Inscription is truly excellent because it's also a genuinely fun one, and like Pony Island before it, you should probably go in knowing as little as possible. Shadowverse has been around for a long time, 6 years and still going strong now. Of course, no game really gets this far without a high amount of user retention. The events are more creative and playing them are more fun. Shadowverse now providing more quest missions and puzzles, including permanent puzzles. This makes the single-player experience a lot more rich. Multiplayer experiences have gotten more exciting too, with Take-Two tactics, Grand Prixes and Crosscraft modes allowing you to mix different classes in a deck and have endless possibilities. Every round of a match in Shadowverse sees players gain one more play point, which is the cost to play a card, than they had in the previous round, up to a max of 10 points. Cards come in 3 varieties: heroes, spells, and various artifact cards. Heroes are played and remain on the board until defeated or removed through another means. They have an attack and HP that persists between rounds and can go up and down as you play. Spells are, as most games play them, single-use effects. What I'm calling artifacts are basically all the other cards that can be played and remain on the board for a period of time until their ability triggers. While the gameplay itself is interesting and adds some strategy to how you build your deck and when you play and trigger various moves, what is the best about Shadowverse are the multiple game modes. First up is the story mode. It's actually really good. The tutorial smoothly slides you right into it from the moment the game loads up. In fact, the beginning of the story is a solid couple of minutes of a fully animated video. There were a few other modes to play as well. Take-Two is an instant deck builder where you choose from a set of cards that appear and then battle with the deck you just built. There's one called Open 6, where you get to open a bunch of card packs and immediately play with a deck built from whatever fell out. I know this is fairly common in meat space tournaments for MTG as well, so it's cool to see it in Shadowverse. One really unique mode in Shadowverse is called Puzzles. On its face, this mode is set up like a standard duel, but each one is actually preset with yours and the AI's HP setup, the cards currently in play and in your hand, and how many play points you have available. It's a puzzle in that you have pretty much one perfect turn to make to win the match. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is one of the latest Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel simulations and one of the most successful. The main focus of the game is the multiplayer aspect. There is a solo mode that features some storylines if you even decide to play it. This mode is all just like a fun little side attraction. Once you complete solo mode for the rewards, you won't be playing it a lot unless you're trying out a new deck. Being a card game, Master Duel is all about the gameplay. It handles pretty well, and glitches are practically unheard of. Master Duel works exactly like how Yu-Gi-Oh! Is supposed to work. Everything is explained. The chain of effects waiting to be resolved is visualized on a literal chain to help illustrate how it works. And there's even a full duel log to explain what's happened on previous turns. With all this accessibility, it'd be easy to think Master Duel may not have much room for veteran players who already know their synchro from their pendulum. Because many of the game's most powerful and complex archetypes are available. That's not the case. The skill ceiling here is just as high as it would be in a tabletop game. It's just been streamlined for convenience. Fortunately, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is a healthy, free-to-play game. The initial gems they give you are enough to craft any deck you want, even a top-tier one. You can then use that deck to get yourself some gems to buy and craft your next deck. You can get gems by ranking up in ranked duels and performing daily objectives. You'll spend 99% of your time with this game in the multiplayer sections. The multiplayer aspect of the game is divided into 5 parts: ranked duel, team battle, duel room, casual match, and event duel. Event duels occur now and then. As the name implies, these are special events, often with a unique rule set or ban list to spice things up. For example, an XYZ event would have other summoning methods severely limited or outright banned to force players to run XYZ decks. The problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is the insane amount of time that you would, as a newbie, have to dedicate to it in order to be competitive. The tutorials are a good start, but they are only a start, and the finer points of deck building and battling can only come with experience. The biggest criticism is that Master Duel is trying to be the go-to digital version of the card game while also being a few sets behind in its card pool. Whether you're a veteran duelist or someone who's had a vague interest at some point in the last 25 years, this is the way you want to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! Hearthstone officially launched all the way back in 2014 with a mere 240 collectible cards. Now, 10 years later, Hearthstone has over 28 expansions, which are released every 4 months like clockwork. Every expansion adds new combinations, rules, and sometimes entire game modes. Hearthstone has added so much content in its lifetime that it has tried to reinvent itself on 2 different occasions, once with the creation of Battlegrounds and a second time with the creation of Mercenaries, to make the game more accessible. Hearthstone has much more to offer than typical TCGs, and includes both single-player and multiplayer options. Solo adventures are special themed matches against the AI and often include heroes, cards, and mechanics that aren't playable in Hearthstone's other game modes. Playing solo adventures is a great way for players to hone their skills and earn more cards, or to simply enjoy the game alone when they choose to. Hearthstone has 9 game modes, all with their own unique rules. Every year, 3 new expansions are launched, adding more than 500 unique cards per year to the game. Each expansion has 2 separate battle passes, and at least twice per expansion, the team will launch a balance patch, changing the text and values of the most prominent cards across every game mode. Blizzard's desire to extract more money from its fans has ballooned the game so much that it's become inaccessible for newcomers and unmanageable for longtime fans. What began as the greatest digital card game ever has transformed into an impenetrable hobby for all but the nerdiest of gamers. If you're looking for a new card battler to jump into, then there are far more welcoming games out there than this. For beginners and those looking for a more straightforward way to play, MTG Arena is the best card simulation out there. With 30 years of history, it's easy to be overwhelmed by MTG's sheer number of cards available. MTG Arena's more modest card library means players have less to learn and fewer to collect, which helps to lower MTG's increasingly high barrier to entry. MTG Arena also offers a fairly generous free-to-play model that allows players to earn a substantial card collection, particularly in the beginning. The tutorials and early game challenges reward hundreds of cards of each color, and players continue to earn boosters and in-game currency by completing daily quests. Additionally, instead of buying or trading cards, MTG Arena allows players to craft the cards they need using wildcards. All booster packs in MTG Arena have a chance to contain wildcards, which are blank cards in any of MTG's rarities. This is more beginner-friendly and means fans can grow their collection without needing to invest money. However, this also means MTG Arena's cards lack any value, and some players miss having the ability to trade with other players, as it's an iconic part of classic TCGs. As the more accessible option, MTG Arena, of course, comes with some limitations. It doesn't yet feature MTG's expansive card collection, so modes like Commander and Modern are off the table. MTG Arena does offer its own exclusive formats like Alchemy, an online-only game mode where cards receive periodic balance changes like Hearthstone and Marvel Snap. This is a great choice for fans of those games trying out MTG Arena for the first time. Games of Magic. The gathering can be incredibly quick, 5 minutes or less, or they can stretch out into multiple-hour affairs. Because of the huge variety of decks people play, Arena can be a tough game to plan your time around. Magic. The Gathering can be a pretty complex game, with endless cards and seemingly endless strategies. Arena, however, provides a simple and easy-to-follow entryway for anyone curious about trying it out but is overwhelmed by card suggestions and gameplay rules. If you're wanting to get started, it certainly feels like a good place to begin. Slay the Spire is a procedurally generated game where no 2 runs will feel the same. There are a huge variety of cards to collect and try out to find out which ones would be the best for you, especially when you're fighting against the boss of that floor who will have a lot more health than the smaller enemies you were fighting up to that point. Once you complete a floor, you can save your progress in case you want to take a break and come back to it later. But if you are defeated in battle, you will be sent to the bottom and you will have to make your way back up. Sometimes the legacy of a titanic success eclipses the reasons it was great in the first place. This is the story of Slay the Spire, a deck-building roguelike that launched 5 years ago this month. You pick one of 4 characters and climb up a several-floor tower, battling monsters and gaining cards to add to your deck. Your goal is to reach the top of the tower and defeat its rotating final boss, a goal as simple to comprehend as it is brutal to execute. One of the reasons is that replaying doesn't ever feel like a retread. Each character is vastly different to play. Building a great deck in Slay the Spire can be thrilling, but what helps change things up more than anything else is relics. The relics represent Slay the Spire's most endearing quality, its encouragement of creativity. More than style or streamlined gameplay, I think this is why it remains a pillar of the deck building genre, while its descendants come and go. Its best magic trick is to place enough options in front of you that when you come up with something really cool, you feel like you're the one who made it, even though it probably came together mostly by accident.